So just start with the thought of your face blushing, maybe an image of it in your mind, and then just say whatever comes to mind.
Gosh, the words I feel like sound so harsh, but really I think of embarrassment, humiliation. I feel like I look stupid. Those kinds of things.
Pretty harsh things. If you go back in time, starting now, but just go way back as early as you can, you think of humiliation, embarrassment experiences where you maybe first started having that kind of flushing?
You know, it probably was when I was in college, and there were people that would say, "Oh my gosh, your face just turned red." And I actually had someone that I worked with that would say to me, "Oh, I just love to embarrass you and watch your face turn red." And I can remember that I hadn't been that aware of it, but then there was just something that it just started, the awareness, I think, it just started happening more and more often.
Yeah. Back in college, it was an early time and you remember it. Can you remember a particular time when you flushed and what was going on then?
When I was in high school and the teacher would ask a question, I would feel fine answering a question and speaking up. And when I got to college, I wouldn't, because I was afraid my face would turn red. So it's just that I'd be in class and I would feel like I had something to contribute, but I didn't want to talk because I thought it would draw attention to myself. My face turning red. Yeah.
What might you have said that would make your face turn red?
I don't know. I wasn't really worried about the content, but I think that just talking in a group, I knew it would turn red, and the idea of it turning red and people thinking, "Gosh, look how insecure she is, that she can't even talk without her face turning red." I just didn't want to deal with it, so I sort of quit talking in class,
And so we started with what causes the flushing or the blushing. And it seemed like that was related to some things in college and people bringing that to your attention. And as you focused on it more and more, it seems to have gotten less and less in control. Would that be right?
Yeah.
And so now we've moved to talking about some safety concerns about your children mostly, but just tragedy striking you. And again, it seems like maybe in some ways, the more and more you try to control your worry thoughts, the less they feel in control. It feels like they keep getting bigger and bigger. Is that?
Yeah. Yeah. They do. And I have periods of time where I don't feel this way, but yeah, I have a lot of thoughts of just wanting to live like a normal person and not having all these thoughts all the time in my head. And I wonder, as we're talking now, if I just kind of am living a little anxiously all the time, and that's maybe affecting I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it feels like right now.
Yeah, kind of this underlying anxiety. Something might go wrong. Something bad might happen. Something that could be a tragedy. The first thing you think of is the car accident sort of thing, and what else? What other kinds of tragedies or just even small bad things might happen?
I don't worry about small things, honestly. I mean, I don't. I feel like I'm pretty good about that. I don't want. Yeah, I can categorize things like, okay, when my kids play really rough a lot, and I think, well, that would just be a broken limb, so go ahead. But when it starts to be, well, that could be a big head injury, then, and I think of all that. I mean, I go through the whole checklist in my head a lot. And I don't feel like, do other people do that? I mean, I don't know. I'm always questioning, like, is this crazy to be just constantly having this in my head. And I think to my kids that I hope that I appear completely calm. That's how I want to appear, because I don't want to put this on them. But
you'd like to have it in your head less. Whether other people are crazy or whether it's crazy or not, you'd like to have it in your head less.
For sure.
Yeah. And what kinds of things have you tried?
Well, I always think about, whenever I'm challenged with something, I always think about the worst case scenario, and I believe completely that I can handle anything. And I've gone through this whole list, like if I, lost my limbs or whatever, I can handle anything, but I can't handle something happening to my kids. And that, so when I try to approach this logically and think, well, so-and-so has made it through life without a big thing happening, and so-and-so, I mean, people just have a lot of tragedy, and so I just come back to that
and feel that underlying nervousness. Yeah. And yet, if we go back to the blushing, that's not a bad thing happening. Speaking up in class, not a bad thing happening. And yet that feels kind of out of control too.
It does, because I really hate to be perceived as stupid. And that's kind of a thing that goes way back for me too. When I was younger, I had this persona that developed that I was an airhead, and I've had to work so hard to kind of, because I think I used it for a while to my advantage, and then in college again I had to work so hard to get rid of that whole image, and it still is kind of in there somewhere, I think.
Still sort of have some fear of being perceived as an airhead, wanting to prove that you in fact are not. And you use the word stupid. Go with that.
I don't know. I really value intelligence, I guess. I value it a lot in other people, and I don't know. I hate that I let myself have that persona for so long. It really bugs me. I feel like I could have done other things with my life if I hadn't gone without it so much.
What's going on to make that seem like a good thing then?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, people gave me attention and laughed, and I don't know.
What kinds of things did you do?
I said some silly things, like, this is in 7th grade, but still, when I see these people, they'll bring it up.
What did you say in 7th grade?
Oh, gosh, really? There was something about a pen that had a calculator in it, and the battery died on maybe it had a digital clock in it, and the battery died, and I didn't think the pen would work anymore because the battery died. And it was just a split moment thing, but everyone laughed and thought it was hilarious, and I think that's kind of when it started. And so people still, 30 years later, oh, do you have a pen, Sarah? And I can laugh. I mean, I am totally fine laughing at myself. That's not the problem. It's just, I just don't want that identity that I'm dumb.
And you kept it for a while.
Like a long time.
Yeah. What are some other examples?
Really? Another one that comes to mind is someone told me that their aunt had had a miscarriage, and I asked her if the baby was all right. So, because I just wasn't, I don't know, but that was just a dumb thing to say. I didn't mean to say that, and so that's another thing people bring up 30 years later.
And that doesn't sound intentional.
It wasn't.
The pen and the miscarriage comment.
No.
And yet one of the things I kind of hear you saying is, well, that's embarrassing. but it's even maybe more embarrassing that you kind of took on that identity. Rita, while I was watching the clip of Sarah, one thing that I noticed was that kind of repeating or recycling pattern where initially when she was asked about the blushing, she went back to a college experience. Later, she goes back to a high school experience. And later, she goes back to a 7th grade experience. And what that reminds me of is how maybe resistance is diminished over time. Maybe trust is built. Either way, it seems like as from this model, you look at things in the past, you uncover different perspectives each time.
Yeah. One thing I noticed during the session is you asked her what she had done before, which can kind of sound behavioral, actually.
Right. It might also sound solution focused, but the reason for asking that is to really sort of glimpse or study her pattern of trying to resolve the problem herself, because that's important to the psychodynamics. And in addition, I felt the impulse at one point, like maybe I should have asked her, what do you think I think of you? Which would be a question that's very psychoanalytic because it kind of pulls for the transference that might be happening in the session between Sarah and me.
Which maybe would have worked or maybe would have been a little early for that kind of reflection.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the next clip picks up right where we left off.
Exactly. So let's watch.